Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Sales can seem kind of like this big scary thing, right? Like only certain people, they're just good at it.
Yeah.
And the rest of us are kind of left wondering, how do they do that? But what if I told you it's not about some magic trick? What if it's more about a shift in how we think about the whole thing?
I think that's a great way to put it. It's like we get so caught up in the idea of selling, we forget about the human connection part.
Exactly. And that's exactly what we're diving into today with this book, Go Givers Sell More, by Bob Burg and John David Mann. Have you read this one?
Oh, absolutely. It's a classic. One of those books that really makes you rethink how you approach, well, not just sales, but relationships in general.
Totally agree. Okay, so this book isn't about those pushy sales tactics, the ones that make you cringe. It's
Yeah.
not about manipulation or tricking people into buying stuff they don't need.
No, not at all. It's really about flipping the script on how we think about success. Instead of focusing on what we can get, it's about what we can give.
That's the law of value right there, right? But it's not just you get what you give. It's deeper than that.
Yeah, they take it a step further. It's about how much more you give than you take. That's what determines your true worth. And I love that because it shifts the focus from a transactional mindset to a value creation mindset.
Right. It's not about keeping score. It's about going above and beyond in every interaction.
Exactly. And the thing is, you've already experienced this, right? Think about a time you had amazing customer service, the kind that makes you want to go back to that store or recommend it to your friends.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. Like when someone remembers your name or your order or they go out of their way to solve a problem for you.
That's it. It's those little things that make you feel valued, seen, heard, and that's what the law of value is all about.
They actually have a perfect example of this in the book about the Ritz-Carlton. You know how they're known for their incredible service? Well, one of the things they do is train their employees to always say, "My pleasure," instead just "no problem."
It seems like such a small thing, right?
Yeah.
But it makes a huge difference in how you perceive their level of service.
It's like no problem. It's neutral. But "my pleasure," that implies they actually enjoyed helping you.
Right, and that's powerful. It shifts the whole dynamic. And what's so cool about this is that it's not just limited to, fancy hotels. It's something we can all apply in our own lives, right? What are you already great at, you? What are your strengths?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me think. I'd say I'm pretty good at explaining things, making complex ideas easy to understand. And I love connecting with people, finding common ground.
That's fantastic. So how can you use those strengths to create even more value in your interaction as you? Maybe it's in your work or your relationships or even just in casual conversations.
That's a good point. I guess it's about being more intentional, more mindful of how I can use my strengths to help others.
Exactly. It's not about being someone you're not. It's about amplifying the best parts of yourself to make a positive impact.
Okay, so that's the law of value. Next up, we've got this really cool concept they call the MacGuffin. It's this analogy they use from movies. Have you ever noticed how in a lot of adventure movies, there's this object, this treasure that everyone's chasing?
Oh, yeah. Like the Ark of the Covenant in Indiana Jones.
That's the one. Or the One Ring in Lord of the Rings. Everyone's fighting over it, risking their lives for it.
But the funny thing is, the MacGuffin itself, the object, it's not really what the story's about. It's just a plot device to drive the action.
It's about the journey, the challenges the characters face, the growth they experience along the way.
And that's how they apply it to sales. Your product, your service, your offer, that's kind of like the MacGuffin.
It's important, sure, but it's not the only thing. What really matters is the journey you create for your client.
It's about the problems you help them solve, the value you provide, the transformation you facilitate.
I love this story they tell about Danielle Erb and her mom, Marianne. So Danielle had ADHD, and her mom really wanted to help her, but she wasn't convinced that medication was the only answer.
Oh, yeah, they were looking for something more holistic, something that would address the root of the issue.
And Danielle loved horses. And they discovered that working with horses had this incredible impact on her. It helped her focus. It boosted her confidence. She thrived.
It was like the horses provided this sense of calm and connection that allowed her to really blossom.
So they were so passionate about what they discovered that they created a program to help other kids. And eventually they founded a private school and a national mentoring program called Drop Your Reins.
Wow, that's amazing. So the program itself, that's the MacGuffin, right?
Mhm.
But the real passion was the journey, the transformation they were helping these kids achieve.
Exactly. And it makes you think about, what's your drop your rain story? What's the journey you're most passionate about guiding people through?
It's a great question to ask yourself, you. What's the deeper purpose behind what you do, beyond just the product or service you offer?
Okay, so we've got the law of value, we've got the MacGuffin, but let's be real for a second. A lot of people, myself included sometimes, have this kind of ick feeling about sales.
Oh, yeah, I totally get that. It can feel sleazy, pushy, manipulative.
It's like you're always trying to convince someone to get them to do something they might not really want to do.
And that feeling often comes from the traditional focus on self-interest in sales, but Go Givers Sell More suggests a different approach, suspending self-interest.
Spending, like putting it on hold for a bit.
Exactly. Like, think about when you watch a movie. You know it's not real, but you willingly suspend disbelief to enjoy the story, right?
Hmm.
They say we can do the same thing in sales. We can temporarily set aside our own desires, our own agenda, and fully focus on giving value to the person in front of us.
Okay, I like that. So it's like saying, hey, for this interaction, I'm not worried about closing the deal or making a commission. I'm purely focused on how I can help you.
Exactly. It's a subtle shift in mindset, but it can make a huge difference. Because when you're genuinely focused on giving, good things often come back to you in unexpected ways.
Like good karma.
Well, maybe not karma exactly, but there's definitely a ripple effect, like planting seeds. You never know which ones will sprout and grow into something amazing.
They tell this great story in the book about Mark Beckford, this blogger who went out of his way to help a friend who was struggling with his new business. The friend was trying to recruit attorneys in China, and he offered to introduce him to some people he knew. Didn't expect anything in return.
He was just trying to be helpful. And what happened?
Well, Mark's friend ended up connecting him with a ton of new contacts and basically became his personal recruiter. He gave generously, and the universe was like, here's a thank you gift.
I love those kinds of stories. It's a reminder that what goes around comes around. Have you ever had an experience like that, where you gave freely and were surprised by the positive outcome?
Oh, totally. I once helped this colleague with a project, even though I was swamped myself.
Hmm.
A few months later, guess who recommended me for a promotion? It's like that saying, what goes around comes around, right?
Exactly. You plant seeds of kindness, and they often blossom in unexpected ways. And that brings us to the law of compensation. This one's powerful because it reminds us that sales isn't just about closing deals, it's about touching lives.
And the book says that the more people you serve well, the greater your potential income becomes. It's like the more you focus on making a difference, the more abundance flows into your life.
It's not about pushing products, it's about making a real, genuine connection with people. And sometimes that means seeing them as individuals, not just prospects.
Oh, I remember this story from the book. It's about Svetlana Kim, this financial advisor
Hmm?
who came to New York. I think she was a refugee, and she built her career from scratch. And she met this woman, Lula, at the networking event. Lula was a widow, and Svetlana could tell she was kind of lonely.
Yeah, and instead of just seeing her as a potential client, Svetlana went out of her way to connect with her. She sent thank you notes, remembered her birthday, even called her when she was sick.
Basically, she treated her like a friend,
Yeah,
and it made all the difference.
it did. Lula was so touched by Svetlana's genuine care that she started introducing her to friends, referring clients, you name it. Within a year, Svetlana became one of the top producers in her company.
It's amazing how human connection can be so powerful. People buy from people they like and trust, right?
Absolutely. And that brings us to building rapport. But this whole idea of building rapport, it can feel kind of forced sometimes, can't it? Like, do you have to memorize cheesy jokes or pretend to be someone you're not?
Right. I'm terrible at small talk. I always feel so awkward.
You and me both. But the good news is, building rapport isn't about tricks or techniques. It's about those simple, genuine gestures that show you're paying attention and that you actually care.
A real smile, active listening, finding common ground.
Exactly. It's about making the other person feel seen, heard, and understood. And they share this great story in the book about Terry Murphy, a really successful real estate agent.
Oh, I think I remember this one. She was stuck at the airport trying to get to Hawaii, and the attendant was being super strict about their tickets. They were in danger of missing their flight.
Oh no, so what happened?
Well, Terry noticed the attendant's name tag was Korean. She had learned how to say thank you in Korean a while back, so she just smiled and said, "감사합니다." Just that.
And it worked.
It totally did. The attendant's whole demeanor changed. She helped them get on their flight, and they made it to Hawaii just in time.
Isn't it incredible how such a small gesture can completely shift the energy of an interaction? It's like you're creating a connection, a moment of shared humanity.
It's like you're acknowledging their existence as a person, not just someone who's there to serve you.
And that's so powerful. This reminds me of another story from the book about Milton H. Erickson. He was this famous psychiatrist, and he was visiting a farm where this hog was having problems. He was just lying there, not eating. The farmer was worried sick.
Uh-oh. What was wrong with the hog?
No one knew, but Erickson, he just walked up to the hog and started scratching its back. And the hog loved it. It started grunting, got up, started eating, acting like its old self.
Wait, seriously, just from a back scratch?
Well, the point is, sometimes building rapport is about finding that simple gesture, that unexpected connection that opens the door to communication. Like Teray with her Korean thank you, Erickson tapped into something the hog needed, and it transformed the situation.
Wow, that's a great analogy. It shows that sometimes the simplest things can be the most effective. So, okay, we've sparked a conversation. We're asking good questions. We're building rapport. What's next? How do we actually start talking about, the sales part?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. Go Giver Sell More actually suggests that the best pitch is
Oh, don't leave me hanging. What is it?
no pitch at all.
Wait, what? No pitch. But how does that even work?
Instead of launching into a pre-rehearsed spiel about your product or service, you shift your focus from selling to serving. It's about having a genuine conversation, asking great questions, and truly understanding the other person's needs and desires.
So it's like we're turning the whole traditional sales process upside down.
Exactly. You're not trying to force your agenda, you're creating a space for authentic connection.
Instead of thinking, how can I get this person to buy from me? You're thinking, how can I make this interaction valuable for them, whether they buy from me or not?
That's such a powerful shift in mindset, and it can lead to more organic and fulfilling outcomes.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this works. So instead of leading with our MacGuffin, we lead with our curiosity and our desire to serve. But how do we actually do that?
Well, they talk about the importance of asking questions, questions that invite the other person to share their story, their passions, their challenges. Things like, how did you get started in this business? Or what are you most passionate about?
Yeah, those are great questions. They show you're genuinely interested in them as a person, not just a potential customer. And that's what starts to build trust, right?
Exactly. It's about listening deeply, asking insightful questions, and genuinely trying to understand their perspective. And as you do that, you might discover unexpected ways that you can add value to their lives. Maybe it's by connecting them with someone in your network, or sharing a helpful resource, or just offering a different perspective.
It's about being a resource, a connector, a problem solver. Okay, I'm really liking this approach. But what about confidence? How can we show up with that I've got this energy, especially when we're trying something new and it feels kind of scary?
That's a great question, and the book talks about the importance of posture, but not in the way you might think.
So not like, striking a power pose.
Not at all. It's much deeper than that. It's about knowing your worth, believing in the value you offer, and trusting in the process.
So it's like an inner confidence that radiates outward, even if you're feeling nervous or uncertain on the inside.
Exactly. It's not about needing external validation. It's about trusting in your own inherent worth. They share this really inspiring story about Sybil, this woman who, she was successful, but she started conforming to these external expectations, trying to fit into a mold that wasn't truly hers. And it was draining her creativity, her passion.
She was playing the game, but it was making her unhappy.
Right. And then she went through this personal crisis that forced her to reevaluate everything. And in that process of introspection, she rediscovered her authentic self.
And she realized that true success wasn't about external validation. It was about believing in herself, knowing her worth, and staying true to her values.
And that realization led her to even greater success. But this time, it was on her own terms. She had this idea for a film about women and self-esteem, and she decided to raise the funds herself.
Wow, that's brave. Did she manage to get the funding?
She reached out to hundreds of female authors whose work she admired. And because she was coming from this place of authenticity, this passion, she got an overwhelming response. She ended up raising half her budget through those connections and got her film project off the ground.
That's so amazing. It shows that when you truly believe in yourself and your value, the right people will be drawn to you.
It's like the law of value in action. When you're radiating genuine confidence, it creates this magnetic energy that attracts the right people and opportunities into your life.
So we're talking about this whole go-giver approach. It's really making me rethink how I approach pretty much everything, not just sales. But, what about competition? Like it's natural to want to be the best, right?
Yeah.
Stand out from the crowd.
It is. It's totally natural to want to succeed. But Go-Givers Sell More, it suggests a kind of a different way to think about competition. It's like instead of seeing competitors as threats, they encourage you to see them as allies.
Allies. Really?
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of like the opposite of how we usually think about competition?
I know, right? It sounds counterintuitive, but think about it. Competition, it can actually push us to, to be better, to innovate, to raise our
So
standards.
it's like instead of bad-mouthing the competition, we should actually like speak well of them.
Exactly. And it might seem kind of crazy, but it actually shows confidence.
Huh.
When you're comfortable acknowledging the strength of others, it shows that you're not threatened by them.
It's like you're secure enough in your own value that you don't need to tear others down.
Right. And it builds trust with the person you're talking to.
There was a great story in the book about a guy, John, who's shopping for a car. He goes to a bunch of different dealerships, BMW, Lexus, Mercedes.
Okay, yeah.
And the BMW salesman, he was, okay, but nothing special. But the Lexus saleswoman, she was amazing, super helpful, even brought cars to his house for him to test drive.
Wow, that's going above and beyond.
Right. And then the Mercedes guy, he was the total opposite. Totally dismissive of the other brands, like pointing out their flaws, trying to make them seem inferior.
Ugh, I hate when salespeople do that. It's such a turnoff.
So guess which car John ended up buying?
I'm guessing the Lexus.
The Lexus.
Yeah.
It's a perfect example of how negativity can backfire. When you focus on building others up, you elevate yourself in the process. So you're telling me I should be, like, cheering on my competitors?
Well, maybe not cheering, but at least acknowledging their strengths. Remember, it's not about tearing others down. It's about creating a more positive and abundant environment for everyone.
Okay, I can see that. So we've talked about giving, we've talked about competition. What about just being ourselves? Does that matter in sales?
Absolutely. In fact, it's one of the most important things. The law of authenticity, that's what they call it. It reminds us that the most valuable gift we have to offer is ourselves.
So you're saying it's okay to be quirky, to have passions, to let our unique personalities shine through, even in a sales context.
Absolutely. And they tell this incredible story about Bill Porter, a door-to-door salesman who was born with cerebral palsy. He faced a ton of challenges, a ton of rejections, but he never let his disability define him. He approached every customer with genuine care and respect, and you know what? He ended up becoming the top salesman for his company.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It shows that authenticity isn't about trying to fit into some mold. It's about embracing who you are, challenges and all.
And it's about recognizing that our quirks, our passions, our unique perspectives, those are our superpowers.
I love that. Our quirks are our superpowers. So being authentic is important, but what about being present? I know I'm guilty of getting distracted sometimes, especially when I'm juggling a million things.
Oh, yeah. Being present is huge, and it's something they emphasize a lot in the book, bringing your full attention to every interaction, being fully present in the moment.
So put away the phone, close the laptop, and actually focus on the person in front of you.
Exactly. It's like they compare these two types of presenters, right? One is he's totally focused on himself, like how he looks, how he sounds, whether people will like him. The other one, he's totally focused on the audience, their needs, their desires, the value he can offer.
And I'm guessing the audience is way more engaged with the second presenter.
Oh, totally. He's not necessarily polished or perfect, but he's authentic and he's present, and that connection shines through.
So it's about asking yourself, what is the most valuable thing I can offer this person in this moment? And then delivering it with your full heart and attention. And that often comes down to the power of listening, right?
Absolutely. Listening is one of the most undervalued skills, both in sales and just in life. The authors remind us that listening is how we truly understand another person's perspective, their needs, their desires.
So it's not just waiting for your turn to talk, it's actually absorbing what the other person is saying.
Exactly. And they talk about the difference between, like active listening and actually just listening. All those nods and uh-huhs, they can feel forced and insincere.
I'm so guilty of that. Like I'm trying to show that I'm listening, but I'm not really absorbing what they're saying.
When you just listen, like really listen, with your full attention, without an agenda, you create a space for the other person to feel truly heard and understood. You're putting aside your own thoughts, your own judgments, and you're just absorbing what they're saying.
And that makes them feel valued, respected. It deepens the connection.
Okay, so we're listening deeply, we're being authentic, we're building rapport. But what about objections? Those can be tough to handle, especially when you feel like you're being personally rejected.
Objections are definitely part of the sales process. But go-givers sell more. It offers this reframing that can make them, well, less daunting. Instead of seeing objections as roadblocks, they encourage you to see them as requests for more information.
So when someone raises an objection, they're not necessarily saying no. Right. They're saying, tell me more, convince me, help me understand why this is worth my time and money.
Okay, that makes sense. They're asking for clarification, for reassurance, for a deeper understanding of how what you're offering can benefit them.
Exactly. And the book suggests turning towards the objection, acknowledging it, and then asking clarifying questions.
Like, for example,
If someone says, this product seems expensive, instead of getting defensive, you could say, I understand. What kind of budget were you thinking of? Or what are your biggest concerns about the price?
oh, I like that. You're not dismissing their concerns. You're showing that you're listening and that you're committed to finding a solution that works for both of you.
And sometimes simply acknowledging the objection and showing genuine curiosity can be enough to move the conversation forward.
Really? Just that?
They tell this story about Bob, a guy who sold radio advertising. He met with this woman who owned an exterminating company, and her immediate objection was, we don't have advertising in our budget.
Oh, no. So how did he handle that?
Well, instead of trying to overcome the objection, he just said, I understand. May I ask you something? And then he proceeded to ask her about her work.
He shifted the focus from the sale to her.
Exactly. He was genuinely curious about her business, and as she talked, he learned about her passion for helping families create clean and safe homes. He really listened, and by the end of the conversation, guess what? She was asking him about his introductory package.
Wow, that's amazing. She went from no budget to wanting to learn more.
It's a perfect example of how genuine curiosity and a willingness to listen can be the most powerful sales techniques.
Sometimes you don't need to close the sale. They close it themselves.
Right. It's not about manipulation, it's about connection.
Okay, so we've established rapport. We're listening deeply. We're handling objections like pros.
Yeah.
What about that final moment, the close? That can feel so high pressure.
It can. But the book offers a different perspective on that, too. Instead of trying to close the prospect, they suggest focusing on opening the dialogue.
Opening, what does that mean?
It's about creating a space for continued conversation and collaboration rather than, a hard sell. So instead of asking, are you ready to buy? You might say something like, what are your thoughts on this so far? Or what questions do you still have?
You're inviting the other person to participate in the decision-making process,
Yeah.
giving them a sense of agency.
Exactly. You're not pressuring them, you're partnering with them. There's this example they give about trying to reach a decision maker in a company. You've finally gotten through to the assistant, but he's being a total gatekeeper. You've tried everything, being polite, reframing your request, addressing his objections. Nothing's working.
I've been there. So frustrating. What do you do?
You say, if you can't do it, I'll definitely understand.
Really? You just give up?
It might sound counterintuitive, but sometimes giving someone an out makes them more likely to help you because you're taking the pressure off. And in this case, the assistant's demeanor totally shifted. He was like, I don't know, I'll see what I can do.
Wow, that's fascinating. By giving him a way to save face, you open the door to possibility.
It's about creating a win-win scenario where everyone feels respected and heard. Instead of pushing for the close, you're creating a space for possibility.
I love that. It's so much less about pressure and more about, like, a mutual exploration.
Right, and that takes the fear out of it for both sides.
This whole go-giver philosophy is really making me rethink, well, how I approach everything, not just sales. But, there's this one concept we haven't really touched on yet, the law of receptivity. And honestly, this one kind of trips me up.
Yeah, it can be a tricky one. We're so conditioned to believe that giving is good and receiving is somehow, lesser. But the book, it points out that giving and receiving are actually two sides of the same coin. Just like breathing in and breathing out, they're both essential for a healthy flow of energy.
So when we resist receiving, we're actually blocking that flow.
Exactly. You're essentially saying that you don't deserve to receive good things, that you're not worthy of abundance. And that belief can really sabotage your success in all areas of life.
It's like closing ourselves off to the good that's trying to come to us.
The authors share this really personal story about their book tour for the Go-Giver. They were initially really hesitant to accept help from others, especially financial help.
I can relate to that.
But as they started to embrace this law of receptivity, they were overwhelmed by the support they received. People donated money for gas, for lodging, even for T-shirts and magnets for the tour. And get this, Ford Motor Company contacted them and offered to provide them with 2 vehicles for the entire tour.
No way. Just because they were open to receiving?
Exactly, and they were blown away by the generosity. They realized that when you open yourself to receiving, you allow the universe to support you in ways you could never have imagined.
You know, it's funny. This reminds me of something my grandma used to say.
What's that?
She always said, you can't pour from an empty cup. It's like you have to be open to receiving, to filling yourself up before you can truly give to others.
That's such a great analogy. It highlights that interconnectedness of giving and receiving. They share this funny story in the book, too, about Bob and his bookkeeper, Trina. So Bob complimented Trina on her pen and asked where she got it. And Trina was like, oh, I'll just give it to you. But Bob was like, no, I couldn't possibly take it. It's yours. You know, trying to be polite.
But he was blocking the flow.
Well, exactly. And Trina, she looked at him and said, if you don't let me give you this little gift, how are you going to let the universe give you all the abundance it has in store for you?
Wow, that's a powerful question. It's like our capacity to receive is directly proportional to our capacity to give.
Right. The more we give, the more we open ourselves to receiving, and the more abundance flows into our lives.
Okay, so we're embracing receptivity, we're open to receiving, we're trusting in the process. But the skeptical part of me is wondering, like, does this mean we just sit back and wait for good things to happen? Do we need a plan? Or do we just trust that the universe will provide?
That's a great question, and they address that in the book. They emphasize that, faith and pragmatic planning, they're not mutually exclusive. Like, you still need to set goals, develop strategies, and take action. But the key is to approach those actions from a place of generosity, of service, of trusting that the universe will support your efforts when you're aligned with your true purpose.
It's about taking inspired action.
Exactly. And they also remind us that sometimes the greatest gifts come from unexpected sources at unexpected times. They call this the left field phenomenon.
Left field, like in baseball.
Exactly. It's like you're playing baseball and a ball comes flying in from out of nowhere. You weren't expecting it, you weren't prepared for it, but you catch it anyway.
So it's like sometimes the best opportunities come when we least expect them.
They share these examples of people who received unexpected opportunities, connections, resources, and it wasn't just coincidence, It was the result of living a life of generosity, of planting seeds of goodwill, and trusting that those seeds would blossom in their own time.
I love that. It's like the universe is always conspiring to help us, even when we don't realize it.
And they talk about the importance of embracing challenges and setbacks too, seeing them as opportunities for growth. Like they tell this story about Joe Vesey, this guy who left his corporate job to start a carpet cleaning business with his wife.
Okay, yeah.
And he faced a ton of challenges, including this major equipment malfunction that almost derailed the whole business.
Oh man, that's rough.
But instead of giving up, he saw it as an opportunity to learn and grow. He innovated, he adapted, and he came out stronger on the other side.
So setbacks are really just setups for something even better.
Exactly. It's all about perspective.
Okay, so we make our plans, we take action, but we also surrender to the wisdom of the universe.
Right. It's finding that balance. But, we've explored a lot of the key principles from Go Give or Sell More, but there's one big question that I keep coming back to. What about those times when things go wrong? What about betrayals, disappointments, losses? How do we maintain trust when we've been hurt, when we've been let down? That's a really powerful question. And it's something the book, it definitely addresses it. The authors acknowledge that life, it's full of challenges, right? And we're bound to experience, setbacks, betrayals, disappointments. It happens.
So they're not saying that if you adopt this, go-giver mindset, everything's going to be perfect.
Not at all. They're, realistic about it. Life can be tough. But they encourage us to see these experiences not as, reasons to just shut down or lose trust, but as opportunities to deepen our understanding of ourselves, of the world around us.
So it's not about being naive. It's about choosing to believe in the good in people, even when we've been hurt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Recognizing that people make mistakes, but that doesn't mean everyone's out to get us.
Right. It doesn't mean we have to close ourselves off.
They share this story about a man who, he lost everything, his home, his family, his business, in a fire.
Oh, wow.
It was devastating. And he felt like giving up.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
But instead of, letting bitterness consume him, he he chose to see it as a turning point. He started reading, learning new skills, rebuilding his life, and he went on to achieve incredible success.
That's amazing. It's like even in the darkest moments, we still have a choice.
Right? We always have a choice. We can let our experiences harden us, or we can let them soften us.
And the authors emphasize that living in a state of trust, it doesn't mean you become, like, gullible.
Right. It's not about, ignoring red flags or blindly trusting everyone. It's about approaching each interaction with an open heart and a discerning mind.
So trust is not about being naive. It's about being wise.
And as you practice living in trust, you actually become more perceptive. You develop stronger intuition.
Okay, so that makes sense. It's not about letting people walk all over you. It's about becoming wiser in how you navigate the world. So how does trust fit into the sales equation?
Well, they point out that sales, at its core, it's about trusting others to value what you offer. You're putting your livelihood, your passions into the hands of others and trusting that they'll see the value in them.
And that can be scary. What if they don't?
It's natural to feel that way, yeah.
Yeah.
But when you can let go of that fear and you approach each interaction with an open heart, you create this space for genuine connection.
So it's about trusting yourself, trusting the other person, trusting the process.
Exactly. And they share the story about Og Mandino, the author of The Greatest Salesman in the World. He went through a period of really intense struggle. He even considered suicide.
Wow.
But he had this turning point when he stumbled upon a library and just started reading.
So books saved his life.
In a way, yeah. He was reading all these books about sales, about personal development, and he realized that the key to success, it wasn't about, manipulation or high-pressure tactics. It was about building relationships based on trust, on mutual benefit.
And he went on to become this incredibly successful salesman and author.
It's a testament to the power of, trusting yourself, trusting others, trusting the process. We're all in this together.
It's so interesting how this whole go-giver approach, it's a little about, like, specific techniques and more about a way of life, a philosophy.
It really is. It's about approaching all your interactions, both personal and professional, from a place of generosity, authenticity, and trust. And recognizing that success, it's not just about achieving your own goals, it's about creating a positive ripple effect.
So it's about making a difference, not just making a sale.
Exactly. And that's a powerful message no matter what you do, no matter who you are.
Okay, well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into Go Giver, Sell More. The 5 laws, the stories, the examples. It's a lot to process. As we wrap up, I'm curious, what resonated most with you?
What stood out? What are you excited to put into practice? Maybe it's suspending self-interest or focusing on making someone's day.
Whatever it is, we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, your insights, your experiences.
We're all on this journey together. We can learn so much from each other.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
We'll see you next time.